Hello, BD6 community. Welcome. Um, welcome all of you to our Legacy of the Armenian Genocide series. We are so grateful to have you here today to dive into this incredibly important topic. My name is Kelly Gonez, and I am the board member representing the East San Fernando Valley Board District 6 and also the president of the Los Angeles Unified Board of Education. This series is intended to be more than just educational. It's about empowering our families with knowledge and empathy, and ultimately about helping all of us advocate for an end to the continuing violence that we see against Armenians. As we speak, the people of Artsakh continue to endure aggression and violence from Azerbaijan. And I know that many in our local Armenian community are mourning these senseless acts of violence against their fellow Armenians, and my heart is with them. And that's precisely why this series and your presence here is critically important. The more we empower ourselves and future generations with the stories and testimonies of the survivors of the Armenian genocide, the more we can ensure that such tragedies are never repeated in our future. I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to be here today. You play such a critical role in preserving this history by passing it on to your children. I also want to thank our partners at the Armenian National Committee of America, Western Region, and today's facilitators who've developed the materials and lessons you'll see. My team and I have had the pleasure of working with our partners for many, many years, and I know that today's session will be a powerful one. I just want to share some quick announcements before we get started. We encourage your questions throughout the session. Please share those in the chat box with any of the hosts that you see listed, and we'll select questions from there to answer during our Q&A session. So now with that, it's my pleasure for us to get started and to introduce longtime LA Unified educator and leader, Alice Petrosian, the chair of the ANCA Education Committee. Alice.
Thank you so much, Board Member Gonez. You and your staff are truly warriors for justice and equity, and it is a real pleasure to be a part of this presentation today. The Armenian National Committee thanks not only Board Member and President Gonez, but also her staff. They have been outstanding in making these programs, two for teachers and this one for families and parents, a reality. The Armenian National Committee Western Region had the vision and the need to create a team of educators as well as non-educators who care deeply about justice and equity, and to have them support public school districts and all communities as they inquire and want to learn more about Armenians, Armenia, and of course the genocide and the present wars that are occurring. So with that, I'd like to share the objectives for today. And they are to learn how to start meaningful conversations at home with your family, and to build cross-cultural understanding and socio-emotional learning skills. As a parent and now as a grandparent, it is my pleasure to spend time with my grandchildren as I did with my children, introducing them to the diversity that is all around us and to celebrate others. And we hope today we might add to your list of cultures to celebrate that of Armenia. Also is the access to the resources that will help you start these conversations and to take on level of action in the community to bring about change. You see, as a grandchild of two genocide orphans, I have sworn to fight against any unkind and evil deed against another human being. And so I hope today that you might consider joining me and all my colleagues from the Education Committee in this commitment to fight against genocide, to say never again. And the people that are going to be doing some of the speaking today are Ms. Amy Bazikian, she's Pupil Services and Attendance and Counselor LDNE in Los Angeles Unified. Ms. Medea Colganmas, she's a retired educator and a counselor from Glendale Unified. Ms. Virginie Tulumian, and she is the ANCA Outreach Director. And with that, we will now go on to having some real close friends share some thoughts with you. They are Senator Anthony Portantino, Assemblymember Audrey Nazarian, and Councilman Paul Krekorian. But we want to thank the United States Congress for recognizing the Armenian genocide, and all the states in the nation that have done so, specifically our own California, which has a mandate in introducing and teaching the genocide. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your afternoon, and we look forward to hearing your comments throughout the program.
Thanks so much, Alice. Unity is such an important theme of today's session. And so with that, we're proud to hear from some of our wonderful local elected officials. So let's go ahead and play those clips.
Hi, I'm State Senator Anthony Portantino, and I'm very pleased to be joining School Board President Kelly Gonez and the Armenian National Committee Western Region on this important discussion of the legacy, the past, the present, and the future legacy post-genocide for the Armenian community. This is such an important discussion, not just for the school children in the Los Angeles Unified School District, but for the state of California to understand, commemorate, mourn, and respect the fallen martyrs and what's happened in the 100 years since the genocide and how vibrant the Armenian community is in California. I'm pleased to chair a select committee on California Armenian ARTSOC, art, trade, and cultural exchange. And it's important that the state of California recognizes ARTSOC, in particular in the aftermath of the war and the aggression that has devastated that wonderful, wonderful country. And so I'm very, very honored that the state of California has ARTSOC in the name of this select committee and that California recognizes ARTSOC sovereignty. It's so tragic that 100+ years after the genocide, we had to deal with this unprovoked aggression that has led to so many horrors and in the aftermath of the war on ARTSOC. That's why it's important today that we discuss the genocide. That's why it's important today that we remember the past, we remember the atrocities, and we respect the families and the descendants who lost their grandparents and great-grandparents to the first genocide of the 20th century. So thank you for highlighting this important conversation. We can never forget, and we must do better going forward. So God bless, and hope everybody has a very, very important, thorough discussion today.
Hi, I'm California State Assemblymember Audrey Nazarian, and I wanted to welcome all of you to Los Angeles Unified School District's commemoration and remembrance of the Armenian Genocide. I wanted to share with you a little bit about my family history and story, but it's very difficult to put into a condensed 5-minute version what's happened over the course of 110 years. So I'm just going to do my best to highlight a few different points, starting with my father's side. My father's parents, my grandparents, were born in the city of Shushi in the Nagorno-Karabakh region, current-day Republic of Artsakh. In 1920, when the Turkish campaign of burning and seizing as much Armenian territory was ongoing, the city of Shushi fell victim. The city was completely burned down, and so my grandparents had to flee and reestablish themselves in the capital city of Baku in Azerbaijan. In the ensuing years, they had my father's older brother and my father, but during that time, my grandfather realized that he did not want to raise a family and continue living in under the Stalinist regime with all the purges and imprisonment that was taking place. And so he left to go and see what economic opportunities he could create in Iran so that he could move his family over. Unfortunately, these plans were thwarted because they were found out by the Secret Service. And so my grandmother ended up being exiled to a work camp, a gulag in Siberia, where she was held captive for the next 5 years. She eventually was freed and came back to grab her two boys and immediately flee and join her husband in Iran. Now, mind you, my father was only 4 when my grandfather had already left to go to Iran and my grandmother was taken prisoner. So for the next 5 years, he and his brother were raised by their cousins and uncles and without either of their parents around. My father in Iran continued with his education, and when it was time to get his university degree, came to the United States, got his architectural degree, went back to Iran, had a very successful career. On my mother's side, my grandmother was born in 1912 in the city of Tsaritsyn prior to the Russian Revolution. During the revolution, she lost her father, my great-grandfather, as well as her oldest brother. And in that very challenging turmoil period and the ensuing years, the family saw that they needed to separate in order to survive. So some years later, my grandmother and her younger brother ended up moving to Iran, to the northwestern city of Tabriz, and their 3 sisters, older sisters and siblings, ended up moving to Armenia. And once the Iron Curtain of the Soviet Union fell, they lost contact for the most part, especially at that time when communication was difficult. Years later, my parents would meet, end up getting married, and they had 3 children, me being the youngest. And the plan for all of us was to come to the United States, get our degrees, go back to Iran, and have a career in Iran. Unfortunately, with the Iranian revolution and war with its neighboring Iraq starting, those plans all went out the window. My sister did come here because she was in her senior year of high school, and so she was going to start her college career here. But my brother being 16, my mother had to get him out of the country right away and reestablish him in Cyprus, in the Mediterranean, in order to make sure that he does not get recruited into the army. She did that, and a few weeks later, when she came back to Iran, she was having a difficult time already moving me out of the country, and I was only 8 at the time. She eventually did. We came to the United States after traversing a few other countries, finally meandering our way to the United States where my sister was. It took 7 years from the time my sister first moved to the US to the time our father finally was reunited with us. I share this because this is just one of many challenging immigrant stories that have befallen many Armenians and non-Armenians who have found their way into California, fleeing genocides, fleeing wars and revolutions and tumultuous circumstances. The reason why I eventually ended up running for office was because when my wife and I spoke, we realized that we wanted our children to know that they are stakeholders in California and in Los Angeles and in the United States. Given the history of coming from a family where in the course of the last 100 years, 3 generations of my family have had to move 4 times in order to survive, California and Los Angeles are home. This is where we wanted to prosper. This is where we wanted to lay down our roots. This is where we wanted ourselves to grow old, to have kids, to have grandkids, maybe even hopefully great-grandkids, so that there's continuity in one place. And in order of doing that, it was very important that we also get engaged in the political arena and government, and to make sure that our voices are heard and are part of the overall decision-making process, both as immigrants as well as individuals who bring this rich history of, unfortunately, many challenges that the family has had to overcome, and to know how to survive and move forward. So I ask all of you who are watching, make sure that you talk to your parents and grandparents. Make sure you're familiar with your history and the stories that have built the foundation that you stand on. because that's the very character building process that's allowed you to be here. I wanted to say thank you to LAUSD for making this program possible, and thank School Board President Kelly Gomez, as well as School Board Member Scott Schmerlson, for always highlighting the Armenian experience and giving it the voice needed in California and in the school district. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you again soon in another opportunity. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Los Angeles City Council member Paul Krekorian, and I want to thank the Los Angeles Unified School District for organizing this event relating to the Armenian Genocide, and I want to thank each and every one of you for participating today. The genocide is obviously very important to me, to my family. I come from a family that was impacted by the genocide. But many people who aren't Armenian might be saying, well, why does this matter? Why do we need to learn about something that happened over a century ago to a people that are different from me? And I'll tell you why. First of all, the Armenian culture was enriching the world before Julius Caesar was born. So any effort to erase that culture from the world affects not just Armenians, but the entire world. So this is important because it affected all of us. When you think of the more than 1,500,000 people who were violently uprooted and murdered during that genocide, and you think what they could have contributed to the world going forward, you realize that this is an event that's not only an atrocity that impacted Armenians, but impacted really the rest of the world. But perhaps more importantly than that, the Armenian Genocide is the worst crime against humanity in the history of the world that still remains unpunished. The perpetrators of the genocide still don't acknowledge their own culpability for it. And there's never been any justice to the victims and the survivors of the Armenian Genocide. And we know that any crime that goes unpunished, particularly one of the most atrocious crimes against humanity that's ever happened in the history of the world, when those crimes go unpunished, they are more likely to reoccur in the future. Now that's a threat to the Armenian people. And we just saw at the end of last year when Turkish and Azerbaijani forces, supported by militant terrorist mercenaries, attacked Armenians and killed thousands of Armenians as part of their continuing commitment to erase the Armenians from the face of the earth. We saw the results of the impunity that happened because the Armenian genocide was not acknowledged. We see that that gives license to future violence as well. But this doesn't just affect Armenians, because we live in a time in the 21st century of great division, of great racism, of great hatred. And if we don't commit ourselves to preventing hatred and to punishing those who commit violence based on their hatred, then as a society, we are certainly dooming ourselves to continuing to suffer the consequences of it.
Well, I certainly appreciate the words and the support of Senator Portantino, Assemblymember Nazarian, and Councilmember Krekorian, especially highlighting the ways in which this trauma continues to live on today, and the ways in which personal stories and personal families have each been impacted by this history throughout the years. With that, I would like to introduce Amy Bazikian. Ms. Bazikian is a pupil services and attendance counselor here in Board District 6 at Sun Valley Magnet School. She also has a master's in marriage and family therapy and has been working in the counseling field for the past 22 years. Welcome, Amy, and thank you so much for everything you're doing to support our students at this tough time.
Thank you, Board President. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm very happy and honored to be here with you this evening. In this segment of our program, I will go over some important historical facts about Armenians. But before we get there, let's talk about the diversity in our community we live in. And why is it important to learn about each other? We heard a beautiful ensemble in the beginning, and which was a product of diversity and unification, a mashup of Armenian and Mexican mariachi combined to create an exceptional piece representing two strong communities of Los Angeles. If you have missed it, we will play it again at the end. Diversity brings different experiences and ideas to the community. When we learn from each other and work together, we become stronger and create a better community. As an educator, it is our duty to teach our students about different cultures in order to bring unity and improve communication amongst our pupils. There are different aspects to the culture. One of the easiest ways to learn about a culture is through their cuisines and music. Restaurants and cultural festivals can be a good place to start. However, the most effective way is when we learn about each other's history. Learning a nation's entire history might not be so easy. So I suggest you try the history of their immigration to the United States. And once you know, chances are you will learn a lot. How about some information about your Armenian neighbors? Population of Armenians, according to 2010 census, is over 200,000 in Los Angeles area. As you know, we just concluded our 2020 census, where we suspect our numbers to be over 300,000. Every culture has a specific Remembrance Day. That could be religious, could be social, could be a victory day. For us, April 24 is a very significant day. It is a day of commemoration where the entire Armenian nation all around the world remembers the 1.5 million innocent Armenians who were the victim of genocide in 1915, 106 years ago. Living in part of Los Angeles, chances are you have seen Armenian flags everywhere in the month of April, on cars, on businesses, remembrance ceremonies here and there. Armenian businesses closing on April 24th. Huge rallies in the city calling for justice. And a question might have come to your mind. Why do you still commemorate after so many years? Why can't you just forgive and forget and move on? In order for me to try to answer this question, I want you to think of a scenario of an unsolved, unresolved killing of a person. So an innocent person was killed, and immediately after the incident, the news channels started reporting on it every day, giving updates on the case almost constantly. Communities closely followed the news, but as time passed, the news channels did not have any updates to report. No perpetrator was arrested, so the media stopped reporting. Communities also forgot and moved on. However, the family members of the victim never forgot. They mourned the loss of their loved one almost every day, and especially on the anniversary of that person's death. They became sad, angry, and frustrated, especially because the perpetrator was not caught and punished. The family did not have a chance to reach closure. Their wounds are probably still open, the same way that our wounds are still open. Why? Because the 1.5 million innocent Armenian men, women, and children who were the victims of genocide perished not on the battlefield, but just for being Armenian, living in Western Armenia under the rulings of the Ottoman Empire. These victims had parents, wives, husbands, siblings, and children. The ones who managed to survive after being deported through the deserts of Syria, were mostly orphan children with no adult family members left to take care of them. These children ended up in orphanages, who ended up marrying each other and forming families. These families, throughout the years, immigrated to different countries, especially the United States. Now, chances are that your Armenian neighbor is the direct descendant of those orphans. Chances are that their family has heightened feelings of sorrow and anger on or around April 24th, because the perpetrators of the genocide continue to deny their actions and remain unpunished. This is a typical case of a psychological condition called transgenerational trauma, where the symptoms and behaviors of the survivor of the trauma is passed on to the future generation. And as Councilmember Krekorian mentioned, from a historical perspective, an unpunished crime is bound to be repeated. Unpunished genocides of the 20th century, Cambodia, Congo, Rwanda, Yugoslavia, North Korea, just to name a few. We spoke about the orphans of genocide. It is important to know that the United States had a direct and active role in assisting these orphans through an organization called the Near East Relief. Almost every household in the United States knew about the orphans and were actively collecting donations to help out. The flyer you see on your screen is from that era, and it reads, "You won't let me starve, will you? I am little Shushan from Armenia. My home has been destroyed. Father was taken away. Mother starved because she gave me all the food. I am so hungry and cold. Thousands of other children are hungry and cold too. The opportunity for our Sunday school, 17 cents a day, $5 a month, $60 a year, will save a life." This flyer is just an example of how much attention was given in the media at the time. There are hundreds of flyers and articles similar to this one. All you need to do is to Google US newspaper articles on Armenian genocide from 1915. $117 million was raised, which is an equivalent of $3 billion today. Near East Relief was United States' first organized international humanitarian effort. The top picture you see on your screen is a group picture in one of the orphanages. In the picture below, orphans are gathered to create an appreciation message to the United States that reads, "America, we thank you." Armenians are known for expression of their gratitude and appreciation, even in an orphanage. There will be a list of resources for you at the end of this presentation, but I wanted to point out this amazing children's book written by one of our committee members, Miss Laura Michael Gabudian, dedicated to the great work of 11-year-old child actor Jackie Coogan, who organized many charitable events in an effort to assist Armenian orphans. It is truly a great read and is appropriate for children of all ages. In conclusion, I wanted to suggest an activity that you could do with your family, especially with children. Try making a family tree. Go as far back as possible. It is a very enlightening and engaging activity for families. Cherish the legacy of your ancestors with this activity. Unfortunately, a big population of Armenians will not have a chance to make a family tree as a result of the Armenian genocide. As I mentioned, This was a very brief history of Armenians. Hope it was helpful. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm going to pass on to Ms. Medea Colganmas. Ms. Colganmas is a retired educator from Glendale Unified School District. She is a lifelong educator, teacher, counselor, and member of the Armenian National Committee of America Western Region Education Committee. She is the co-founder of Committee for Armenian Students in Public Schools, also known as CASPS. She is an active member of the community and has served in numerous community and educational organizations in the last 40 years. This is Mrs. K.
Thank you, Mrs. Bazigian. Good afternoon, everyone, and dear parents. Thank you for joining us. I'm also honored to be with you and appreciate the opportunity to discuss and analyze the power of hate, an unpleasant topic, but an important one. Compassion, empathy, love, understanding, acceptance, tolerance, kindness. Aren't these beautiful words? They bring a smile to your face, they warm your heart, and they make you feel good. In contrast, there is the word hate. What is hate? Hate is part of the range of human emotions. Hate is a negative emotion. Hate is a strong emotion. Hate is a destructive emotion. Behavioral research scientists believe that all people have the capacity to hate, but there is a debate between them. And that debate is, as human beings, are we born with hatred in our hearts? Or is hatred a learned behavior? The sad reality is that most scientists believe that hatred is a learned behavior. Hate can cause prejudice, racism, aggression, violence, vandalism. It can be the cause of ethnic cleansing. It can be the cause of genocide and even wars. In this slide, you see the consequences and hate, the power of hate. An Armenian school vandalized in Los Angeles, an Armenian church burned in San Francisco, and the attack on Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh and the subsequent war in September 2020. We heard our elected officials talk about the Armenian genocide, the horror, pain, and the trauma families endured and are still enduring for so many generations. Why was there so much hatred towards citizens of Greek, Armenian, and Syrian heritage in Turkey? Here are some of the reasons. Fear. The Ottoman Turks, the perpetrators of the genocide, believed that Armenians were dangerous because they demanded their equal rights as citizens. Envy. Armenians were the object of envy because they were the educated middle and upper classes of society and led prosperous lives. Anger. The anger was the result of the Ottoman Turkish territorial losses during World War I. Humiliation. Ottoman Turks felt humiliated because of the loss of power and status in the world as a result of World War I. Misconception. The perpetrators of the genocide incorrectly felt that Armenians were siding with enemies of Turkey. These negative emotions and false perceptions culminated in the annihilation of Armenians, loss of their cultural history and their homeland. How do we stop hate, knowing that it ruins and destroys lives? As educators and parents, we have the responsibility to teach children to accept and respect differences in people, teach about the harmful effects of prejudice and the negative aspects of hate and how not to succumb to it. Dear parents, these teachings start at home. Let me share with you what I did in my own family. My husband and I wanted our children to have respect for all cultures. My son was in the 4th grade when one day at home, he used a derogatory word about an ethnic group. I didn't like it at all. I asked him to, do you know what that word means? He said, no, but all the kids in my school say it. I said, Alex, listen to me. Dad and I don't want you to say that word because that word is racist and hurtful. And now, my son, who's an adult, will share with you his thoughts about that conversation. Video, please.
Hello, parents. My name is Alex, and I'm Medea's son. First, I congratulate both the presenters of this webinar and all the parents for your participation. My mother already told you the story about when I was a 4th grader and words that I really didn't understand. So I'd like to continue that story. That evening, my mother taught me not to use words that are racist and hurtful towards others. I really didn't understand what racism meant, but I understood what hurtful meant, especially when she said that those words will hurt your classmates. She took the time to explain that my classmates may be from another country, but they're just like me with moms and dads who love them. She said, no parent wants their child to be hurt, just like she and my dad didn't want me to be hurt. Her words left an impression on me, and I learned that day. I'm grateful to my parents for being such good role models and teaching me this lesson about hurtful words. Based on my experience, I would recommend that parents talk to their kids about these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I have another family story to share with you. I have an uncle in marriage. His name is Ron Fritzell. When he was a young man, he heard derogatory and demeaning comments he didn't like about Native Americans. He decided to educate himself by living with them on their reservation for 6 months. He found the experience so enriching that he became the strongest advocate for the Native American culture, their values, and their traditions. My uncle's story is a perfect example of things we can do to build cross-cultural understanding, appreciation, and harmony among people of different backgrounds. Now, obviously, we can't all do that. We can't all go live with people that we want to be familiar with, but there are other ways. For example, you can learn about other cultures by participating in community culture events and festivals with your family, where through positive interactions, and you can familiarize yourself and your children with other cultures. And at home, you and your family can learn about other cultures through music, books, movies, and even cuisine. Please note on the slide that the ANCA website can help you find more resources about Armenian history and Armenian heritage. Tools for having meaningful conversation in your family. We live in a very challenging time. Local, national, and international tragedies, mass shootings, riots, wars, ethnic cleansings, genocides happen frequently. When these tragedies, which all have an element of hate in them, happen, children feel vulnerable, fearful, and powerless. Parents can ease their children's anxiety by engaging them in a family discussion about hate. Here are recommendations parents use to help children understand and overcome hate. As parents, prepare yourself, explore your own feelings about hate, analyze your own fears and perceptions, share them with your children. Ask and listen in order to know what your children are thinking about hate. Allow them to articulate. Treat all their questions with respect. Do not shush, ignore, or dismiss them. Most important, don't get angry, stay calm. Teach your children not to fear differences, focus on similarities between people, and celebrate diversity. Be honest. Explain and answer questions clearly and honestly when your children are concerned, worried, or confused about hating someone or a group of people. If you don't know how to respond and answer their questions, say, let's plan on finding the answers together. Include your children in your discussions and make that into a family discussion. It's very important to make your children feel that they are part of the solution. And take action. Children need to know that they are not powerless in the face of hate. Help them understand that sometimes it might be safer for them to seek adult assistance and that you're always there to help them. Thank you. I hope that these suggestions were helpful. And now I would like to introduce Miss Virginie Touloumian, our next presenter. Ms. Touloumian is the ANC Western Region Community Outreach Director and a member of ANC Western Region Committee. She will talk to you about available resources for parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Medea. The events which unfolded between 1915 and 1923 constitute as one of the greatest assaults upon humanity in the history of the world, yet the Armenian genocide remains to be undertaught in many schools and a taboo discussion within the media and political sphere because of the millions of dollars that the Turkish government dumps to impose a gag rule. It is important that this trend is broken. Humanity must study the past in order to avoid repeating the atrocities committed so many years ago. To this day, the crime remains to be unpunished and really just requires a truthful and a just international resolution, one that punishes the perpetrator state, gives reparations and restitution, and prevents future genocide. And if I were to describe this all in one word, it would be justice. When the Ottomans tried to destroy us, they took the Armenian nation like a pomegranate and threw it against the wall, ripping apart the fruits and casting the seeds across the world. Wherever those seeds landed, they took root. We rebuilt our communities and contributed greatly to those nations. Several of these nations also have Armenian genocide memorials, as you can see in your screen, to honor the victims, where the community has found a permanent location to honor and preserve the memories of the martyrs. Many countries and 49 US states have already recognized the Armenian genocide and have called on Turkey to come to terms with its brutal past and find a pathway to the future. In 2019, a bipartisan and a near unanimous congressional vote also recognized the genocide, and we are hoping that the administration later on this week will also, for the first time in 40 years, again reaffirm the Armenian genocide and properly commemorate it. The damage of the genocide is really palpable, and we feel the consequences to this day, socially, economically, and politically. We suffered then and we continue to suffer now as Turkey continues a relentless worldwide campaign to erase the facts and the memory of the genocide. Now, you might be asking, what can I do to show my solidarity with the Armenian community? So here are 7 things that allies can do. And honestly, this isn't just towards the Armenian community, but if we want to be human rights advocates, this is something that we should do for every single marginalized group. So here are some of the things. First is listen to what they are saying, whether that's face-to-face, on your social media feed, or in the articles you read. Listen to their stories. We all have very unique family stories about the genocide and how it has affected us all. 2, get educated. Seek out books and films about the history and current issues facing the community. Sometimes it's really just exhausting, the need to regularly explain the history and how Turkey continues to run this relentless campaign, and even condone and encourage the genocide to continue, as we saw in Artsakh just a few months ago. By attending this workshop, you have already listened to our story and have used the time to educate yourself. 3 is intervene. When you see something, do something. When someone is being targeted, whether that's physically or verbally, let's intervene to stop the discrimination. Focus on supporting them rather than engaging with the aggressor. Let's also speak up. When a friend, a family member, coworker, or a stranger says something hateful or ignorant against any race, call them out on it. Silence is complicity, so your words truly matter. Show up. When someone from a marginalized community invites you to an event, go. You be there, listen, learn. You could show your support like that. Stay engaged. Even when the work gets done, you should stay engaged. Learn about their ongoing struggles and familiarize yourself with the different issues that's facing that community. By staying up to date with the current political climate and its painful history, you allow us to feel less alienated. This also means while you're exercising your civic duty and voting, research the candidates who really reflect equality and make that part of your decision-making process. Overall, this world needs more upstanders. So be an upstander, raise an upstander. If you see discriminatory behavior at work or at school, report it. If someone uses inappropriate language or slurs, even as a joke, call them out and educate them on how their behavior is hurtful and it can negatively impact the environment. We should be raising our children who are actively working for justice, inclusion, and equity. And the best thing you can do for your children is to lead by example. Again, these 7 acts are not just for the Armenian community. Many of our friends in our community, especially during this time, need us to stand up for them. So consider doing this for the overall community, doing this for social justice. We have compiled a list of books that's divided by age groups and movies that you can watch as a family on our website. Following the books and films, there are also questions that can guide you to have these meaningful conversations at home. So I'm encouraging you to visit our website and explore these sections. I'm also encouraging you to take 2 actions to ask President Biden to fully and formally recognize the Armenian genocide, joining with the US Congress in permanently locking American remembrance of this still unpunished crime against humanity. You can visit anca.org/April, where you can send a letter to the White House, and it's a very easy website to navigate. You can also sign a petition on change.org by visiting Yes, It's Genocide. Medea spoke about the hatred that's deeply rooted within our community, and I'd like to point out that when Armenians are protesting and demanding justice for our rights, it's honestly not because of the hatred we have towards our enemy. More than that, we have love towards our community, our family, our ancestors, and our homeland. So in different diasporan communities, as Armenians and non-Armenians alike demand justice on April 24, you have obviously seen it here on Wilshire Boulevard while we demand justice through recognition, reparation, and restitution from the government of Turkey, the successor of the Ottoman Empire. It's a time where really our issue becomes the cause for the entire city, even if it's for a short period of time. And we are thankful for the solidarity this community continues to show us. When any government gets away with a crime like genocide, they're made to believe they can get away with more. When world powers encourage this kind of behavior through deliberate silence, they too are complicit. So there's this interconnection between the difficulties faced by the different communities here in Los Angeles. And we stand strong as proud sons and daughters of our ancient nation, but also as Angelinos. And we are committed to making this a city, the home that we really deserve to live in. The LAUSD team will also provide you with a 1-page postcard, and you can scan the code with your camera and it will take you to the resources page. That resources will be with the films, the lesson plans, videos, and discussion points so you can have these meaningful conversations at home. The postcard also includes links to our social media platforms, and you can follow us there so you can stay up to date with our initiatives. I am also now going to pass it back on to LAUSD President Kelly Gones to facilitate the Q&A portion of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of those ladies for that wonderful presentation and helpful information. We will now move on to a quick Q&A portion of the presentation. A friendly reminder, if you have questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat for any of our presenters. Any questions we don't have time for, we'll make sure to follow up with you all. So with that, let's move to our questions. We have a question from one of our parents for Amy. Amy, there is a question about where can I find more supporting information about social emotional learning? We know socio-emotional learning definitely connects to the topics we've discussed today around hate and tolerance and diversity. So I was wondering if you could address that question for one of our parents.
Oh, yes, sure, absolutely. So since our parents are LAUSD parents, we obviously have great resources on our website. Just visit lausd.net, and when you see the magnifier, you can search socio-emotional learning. Then there will be so many articles coming up. You could also search the LAUSD's mental health, school mental health website. So all you need to do is, again, on the magnifier, just type in school mental health, and you'll see a ton of resources for parents, for students, for different issues related to socio-emotional learning. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Medea, a question for you. So from your experience, how can teachers and parents work together to help address cross-cultural understanding? I know this is something I've dealt with my own family, with my young children, helping them understand about different cultures, the different experiences that they've impacted, and how we can be allies in those fights. So anything you can share about cross-cultural understanding for our families who may not be familiar with the Armenian genocide prior to this year.
Yes, absolutely. To build cross-cultural understanding, parents and teachers working together can prepare children to become 21st century American citizens who are equipped and feel comfortable with the richness and diversity of their multicultural society. This is what we're all aiming for, to be emotionally healthy, to live in a society where we respect each other. And parents and teachers play a very important role in that. I was a teacher in the classroom with students of diverse ethnic backgrounds. And based on my experience, the teacher plays an important role in building a good cross-cultural understanding. Here are some of the approaches that I found effective. Teachers express an interest in the ethnic background of their students. Very important. Not to be critical, not to be judgmental, but express an interest. Teachers can play a series of interactions with families. These include bonding with the family through phone calls, written notes, emails, conferences with parents. Teachers may consider visiting their homes, the homes of the students. Go to ethnic grocery stores, go to playhouses, places of worship, and community centers. I know sounds like a lot of work, but it becomes very, very interesting and creates a lot of understanding. One more thing, teachers may also plan meetings with parents of the same ethnic group and listen to their stories. I did that. I invited different ethnic groups in the evenings, and we talked and we shared our stories. Parents also have responsibilities in the cross-cultural understanding. Parents have to take an interest and learn about the culture of their newly adopted country. Parents have to take an active part in their children's education by supporting and attending school activities and learning about the school culture. And last, parents can contact their child's teacher and volunteer to help and serve in their school in a variety of ways. And those are some things that our parents and teachers can work together to create a cross-cultural understanding. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Those were such great suggestions. I know home visiting was definitely something that was incredibly helpful to me as a teacher. So I so appreciate all of those great ideas that our teachers and our parents can utilize. We are just about at time. Was hoping we would have more opportunity for questions, but we want to be respectful of everyone's time. We know parents have bedtime and dinner time to get to, including my own. With that, we will wrap up. We've come to the end of our session. I want to thank our presenters again, just for their thoughtful presentations today, all of the helpful resources, and you all of our attendees will receive an email with all of the resources we shared today. Thank you so much for joining us to learn more about how you can have these important conversations at home with your students and empower your community and continue to enhance our intercultural understanding and tolerance, recognizing that diversity is our strength here in Los Angeles. I will now hand it over to Alice for any last words she wants to share.
Thank you to Honorable Kelly Gomez and to her staff. We are going to now share with you something that is very beautiful, and that is how cross-cultural understanding can make a difference in our world. Please watch the mariachis and the classical Armenian musicians together and see, when joining together in love and peace, what can be brought about. Thank you again to Board Member Gomez.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that beautiful song with us all. What a perfect way to wrap up our session. With that, once again, we thank all of our amazing presenters for the time that they have spent today, the amazing resources that they provided, and to all of our attendees for your thoughtful participation. With that, we're going to stop our recording and wish you a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you so much.